Hi everyone, this is Ms. Zahra, and today we are reviewing evidence from rocks and fossils. Sediment is a small piece of rock, and over millions of years, many of these sediments will press together and form layers of rock known as sedimentary rock. Over here, we can see what real sedimentary rock looks like, and we can actually see these layers inside of the rock. You take a drive past Chibble Feet, you will see the layers inside of the rock as well. Now let's look at how these rocks were pushed up. So the earth is actually made up of broken pieces, which we spoke about in the last lesson. And these broken pieces are known as plates. We know the plates can push each other, pull each other, and slide past each other. And when these plates push each other, they actually make mountains. And the place they form is known as the plate boundary. So over millions of years, as the plates pushed on each other, they lifted the land up to form mountains. Inside of this sedimentary rock, we can find fossils. And the reason we find fossils over here is because when the animal dies, it falls down inside of the layer and it's buried inside of it. So if we want to know how old a fossil is, we have to go down into the deepest layer. And the deepest layer, we will find the oldest fossil. The youngest fossil will be found closer to the top. So what can these fossils tell us? Well, I can look at the shape of the fossil and I can tell the food that the animal ate. I can look at what kind of fossil this is and what it belonged to. For example, over here I can see this is a bone and maybe I know that it came from a horse, and this will tell me that a horse lives on land. If I find fossil of an animal like a fish, I know a fish lived in water. So this tells me that the environment has changed over time. When I find different fossils of animals in the same layer, I know that they lived at the same time. All of this information is known as evidence. Evidence is information and clues that I find in the rocks that tell me about the past environment. So this over here, I can see in these layers, there were some leaves, and leaves come from a forest. So if I find fern leaves, I know that the land used to be a forest. Before that, it used to be covered in water because I can see a lot of fish. And over time, I now see that they are animals with feet, so it is land. So these layers, again, they let the fossils help me to see what the environment was like in the past. And over here, we can see that this layer and this layer matches. So something broke the land and turned it into a canyon. And I can see over here that that was the river. So flowing water, moving water from a river will cut the layers of the sedimentary rock over millions of years. And in that time, it will cause a canyon to form. And on either side of the canyon, you can see that the layers match up. And we can tell that the animals that lived here and here were the same, lived at the same time. So even though the layers are cut, it's not disturbed. It's the same age. We can tell where the animals were from. We can tell if they lived on the land or in water. This is what a real canyon looks like, and we can see this picture in our book. You can also see the layers over here in the rock. Okay, so this layer looks a little different. It does look disturbed. It looks like it moved up and down. And this forms from a sudden shift of the earth. And that's known as an earthquake. An earthquake is when the earth suddenly flips. And when it does this, the land will move up and down, and you will end up seeing these S-shaped folds in the rock. So these layers are disturbed as the earth suddenly shifts from an earthquake. So we all know what this is. I'm sure we know what a volcano is, and this volcano is under the ocean. So this is an AI generated image of an underwater volcano. But in real life, an underwater volcano looks more like this. Okay, it's not so neat and pretty. But what happens from it is that from this volcano, the lava is coming out. And as it comes out, it ends up turning into rock as it gets cold. And it keeps stacking up layer by layer until it pushes out from under the ocean, forming an island, like we can see in this video. So we know that lava, when it cools, it will become rock and form islands if it is in the middle of the ocean. Okay, once this lava cooled off, we can see this is the finished island. And if it erupts again, it will make the island bigger. So now let's talk about evidence again. These fossils are from something called ammonites, and ammonites used to live in water. Scientists found these ammonites as well as fish fossils on the top of mountains in the Himalayas. So these fish fossils and ammonites were found on the top of mountains. We've also found fish fossils and marine fossils on the top of Jebel Hafid. And what does this tell us? It tells us that many years ago, this land was underwater, covered by water. So the key to look for is that it is evidence that tells me environment has changed from water to dry land. And that's the end of this section. I hope that it helped you understand lesson number 2.